I don't know enough about how wormholes,
Black holes.
black holes, work. Brown holes. Black
Brown
holes.
holes? Okay. So...
Brown dwarf stars.
So
Let's just reset here for a second. Welcome to another episode of the Astromax Show. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We are going to be continuing our discussion of Strange New Worlds. We are now on episode
4.
I was about to say line. Let's take a minute to discuss kind of what we do here for people that maybe this is the first episode that they've watched. So, Will and I are lifelong Star Trek fans. And we're also lifelong nerds. Mm-hmm. So we decided we wanted to do a show that was just a discussion. You know, we're not trying to rate anything. We're not trying to review anything. Really get into the nuts and bolts of stuff. We want to just talk about the things that we love and hopefully bring people into that conversation. We had a subscriber a couple episodes ago who left a really wonderful message on our channel saying that this reminded them of the conversations that you would have in a comic book shop. Now, full disclosure on that comment, this particular subscriber, we used to work together at a comic book shop. So, and these were very much the conversations that we used to have, but I think generally it applies to... It could be any comic book shop. It doesn't have to be a comic book shop. It could be a coffee shop. It could be your video game store. Wherever you get your geek on, you're going to find conversations of people with similar interests, passionate conversations about everything. You know, who would win in a fight? Thor or Hulk? Right? Who's the better captain? You know, Cisco or Janeway?
That's a hard one.
That's a hard one. We're not gonna. That's not this episode.
Okay. Because I want to just dive right into that, but we won't.
So I can't. For me, when somebody says that this show reminds them of that conversation, I can't think of any higher praise.
No, that's exactly what I wanted to happen.
The sweet spot on that conversation is you have to have a level of inclusion, right? I will never understand nor have any tolerance for gatekeeping in nerd stuff.
Right.
Like, some of our viewers might be too young to remember the before times when nerd stuff wasn't pop culture.
Right.
So, now that it is pop culture, the idea of telling people that they can't participate in nerd because they're nerding wrong just grinds my gears. Now, we've been doing Star Trek, and we're going to continue to do Star Trek.
Oh, yeah.
So this segment coming out, this episode, every Thursday, somewhere between midnight and 3 a.m., depending on the editing schedule. These are going to be coming out indefinitely, forever and always, until we run out of Star Trek episodes, which at this rate is never going to happen.
No.
However, we have been kicking around some other ideas. We've been looking at other TV shows we might want to do, like Beast Wars, Transformers Beast Wars.
I'm super excited about that one.
That is going to date us. The internet already knows we're old, but they're really going to know we're old.
I've got to come to terms with that someday.
Yeah. So we've been talking about Beast Wars. We've been talking about maybe something like Frisky Dingo or some other Adult Swim cartoons. And also thinking outside the box, outside of TV shows, into, maybe tabletop games, board games, video games, the broader nerd culture in general. So we've been kicking around a few ideas. We're looking to get something else out as we get into October, probably.
Yeah.
So if you have any ideas, something you would love to see,
We welcome suggestions.
We do. It's been a long time since we've seen each other, Will.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
First, I want to thank you for getting all the episodes posted up while I was on vacation.
Happy to.
So, disclosure for you out there on the internet, the previous 5 episodes that have been put up now were all kind of filmed ahead of time.
Yeah.
And then released out because we knew we were going to have this gap where I wasn't going to be around. So Will gracefully took over making sure those were posted. So going forward, though, we're pretty much on a schedule where we're recording episodes every week as we put them out. So the interaction between us and you all, our wonderful, wonderful watchers who we do truly appreciate.
We really do.
We can actually do them a little bit faster. It was a little bit hard to react to stuff in episodes because we'd already filmed all of them and put them out. So now if you have comments, thoughts, things that you wanted to chime into these topics, other episodes, other Star Treks, whatever.
We welcome all of it.
We can get to them at the top of the episode now and discuss them. What have you been up to in the month since I've seen you?
Oh man, what have I been up to? I've been working a lot and, gotten through a few books. One was a recommendation from you. Piranesi.
You finished Piranesi?
I finished Piranesi. Oh. And I thought it was fantastic. The author's name, remind me again.
Susanna Clarke.
Susanna Clarke, of course. What a great book. And that was between 300 and 400 pages long.
I did the audiobook version.
Oh, okay.
So on my road trip, so I don't know.
See, audiobooks is still, that's one thing that I have not been able to jump on board with is audio. I am so late to this party.
2 things that'll make you jump on the audiobook bandwagon.
Okay.
Take 1,600-mile road trips around the country.
Okay.
That'll do it.
I'll schedule that one.
Yeah. The second, paint Warhammer miniatures. Sit there for hours on end and paint Warhammer miniatures. You will need an audiobook.
Fair enough.
That's
so cultivate a hobby that
forces you to.
Okay.
Yes.
And then take 1,600-mile road trips.
Yes.
Yeah, that's going to require some lifestyle changes on my part, but I'll get to it.
A few.
All right.
So I have to know now, and you don't have to go deep into it because it's a huge book. Well, it's not a huge book, but it's a deep book.
It's a huge discussion.
Yeah. Give me some of your thoughts on Piranesi.
Man, I love the fantasy and sort of sci-fi elements to the book, and I love how those were understated. I love the idea of multiple worlds and the stories that we create about how a person gets to another world. I'm just always in. I'm always in for that, right? And Piranesi brought some real innovation to the subject, and I enjoyed our main character a lot, Piranesi. Not his name.
No.
But that's how we refer to him.
Yes.
I just thought it kind of enchanted me from page 1, right?
So I had a hard time putting that book down.
Yeah.
Or turning it off, as the case may be, because I wasn't actually reading it. But I was amazed when I got to the end of that book that while there's this mystery going on, quasi-mystery, there's questions that you're continually asking yourself as the reader.
There's this slow unraveling.
Yeah. I found for me the parts that I loved the most about that book were just the descriptions of the halls and the statues and just the living in that place that Piranesi does, particularly around the birds. The birds cracked me up.
Yeah.
It is raining. I don't like it.
It is raining. I do not like it. Is this food? I'm almost certain that this is food. So that's what I got up to. What else did I get up to? I've been reading, rereading Wise Man's Fear by Mr. Patrick Rothfuss.
I'm not familiar with that book or author.
Right. So he's in the midst of his 3rd book. Keeps teasing and putting us off with the release date.
Is this the Killer
King Killer
thing?
Chronicles?
Yeah, you've been okay. You've been.
I've been trying to get this guy to read it for a while now.
You have.
The first book has been out for over a decade now. Name of the Wind.
It's been that long. You've been trying to get me to read this series.
It's been a while. Look, you recommended Piranesi, and I had it
I know.
the next day.
Now I feel so bad.
You should. You should. I mean, my advice is always good with these recommendations. I don't know what takes you so long. So the King Killer Chronicles. I'm super excited about the third book. Again, he keeps sort of pushing a release date. I don't think he's even sort of given a hint about when the third and final book of this story is coming out. But I can't wait.
And it's a fantasy.
It's fantasy.
It's fantasy.
Yeah, it's sort of high fantasy. With some really inventive approaches to the classic fantasy tropes, magic and demons and sort of otherworldly creatures. Just super inventive and fresh, which is kind of, I don't want to say rare, but it's what kind of marks, good new fantasy is this like these different takes.
Yes.
Right? So yeah, that's what I've been up to.
Okay. All right. You've been on a reading tear. I listened to quite a few audiobooks. Piranesi was the best one. Mm-hmm. I watched the new Predator movie.
Right.
I watched the new Predator movie. It was excellent.
Okay.
Excellent.
That's what I've heard.
It's my favorite Predator movie.
Okay.
Hands down. I will say I've only watched the Comanche dub version on Hulu. Mm-hmm. So perhaps in English it is not my favorite.
That's usually just all that you haven't watched it in English.
I feel like the subtitles. So listening to the Comanche is awesome, and it really helps put you into that setting.
Okay.
I also feel like perhaps there are not as literal translations in Comanche as there are in like just if you were just English dub it and listen to it in English, because it didn't seem to have a lot of the over the top dialogue that action movies of the Predator genre have had.
Right. Also sounds like a safe assumption, but I suppose we'd need someone fluent in Comanche.
Right. Yeah. Either this is the best written from a dialogue perspective Predator movie, or one of the better written sci-fi action movies period out there, or just if I were watching it in English, I'd be like, oh no, the dialogue is actually really terrible.
I mean, always a fear, right? When you're enjoying the foreign language version of something.
Yes.
It's always a fear. You're like, oh gosh, in English this might just tank.
But it's a beautiful movie. It was filmed in Alberta, so it's beautiful northern Great Plains, landscapes. The Predator was wicked. All of the technology, killing, lethality you would want from a Predator.
Mm-hmm. I saw some clips and I appreciated the aesthetic that I saw.
Yeah, and then the Comanche themselves are excellent. I'm no historian, so take my opinion on them as like a grain of salt.
Okay.
But it seemed very genuine and very authentic. And I don't want to spoil anything, because even though I think it's a brand new movie, I know it's been out for a little while, but maybe not everybody's watched it. The main Comanche warrior, not the main character. The main character is a female who's like trying to become a hunter, but the tribe's like chief hunter warrior and the Predator have a scene where they throw down. Okay. One of the best choreographed fight scenes I've seen.
Nice.
It is hardcore. Yeah. It's hardcore. I would recommend anyone if you're a Predator fan, you've probably already watched it. But if you're just a sci-fi fan or an action movie fan, put Prey on your list. It's a great movie.
Cool.
All right, it's time to jump into the meat of this episode. We rambled on there a bit. We had to get caught up. And you had to get caught up with us too.
Yeah.
So, episode 5 of Strange New Worlds. Are we right? It's episode 5 of Strange New Worlds? Or are we on?
This is 4.
5? Okay.
Episode 4.
Episode 4.
Memento Mori.
Memento Mori.
Right.
Latin for remember me fondly.
Or remember death.
Okay.
Or remember that you must die.
Very fitting title for this episode, as it deals with reflections on death, because when the episode opens, they're like Remembrance Day.
Starfleet Remembrance Day.
Yeah. And then also the situation the crew finds themselves in. Very perilous.
Yes.
Very perilous. I'm going to let you kick off first impressions. And then I'm going to rant.
Okay. So first impressions. I actually have a lot to say in first impressions because I had to watch this episode twice. The first watch through, I didn't like.
That's what you had said.
Yeah, I didn't like my first watch through, and I was unsure why, so I watched it again. But my first impression was that there was some sort of departure in tone from the previous 3 episodes that just sort of caught me off guard. I wasn't prepared for, and I felt I was a bit jarred by it. And so my initial impression was dislike. I was like, well, this is weird, and it feels different than what I was led to expect from the past episodes. And on the second watch through, I kind of had to do a double take, and I was like, is Rick Berman like signed on here? Because the dialogue and some of the moments that they made time for were just, it was like a flashback to DS9 or Voyager for me. You know, Michael Piller, somebody.
Absolutely.
From an older...
I imagine Michael Burnham with like one of those costume glasses and nose, like creeping into the writer's room. And like editing
yes. So it's like, you guys are taking this a little too seriously. You know what I mean?
Like, this is how you write Trek. The lines are cheesy.
At least make room for that. And they did.
They did, and you're absolutely right. Everything that Strange New Worlds has done up until this point, and a lot of modern Trek in general, whether it's Picard or Discovery, has these really refined writing styles.
Yeah, I mean, it's TV for the modern viewer, not just of Trek, but of really any sort of consumer base, right?
Yeah. And a lot of the pacing and dialogue in this, almost all of it, seems about 25 years out of date. Which is great for an episode that is like directly tied into, well, not directly tied into, but is such a huge part of the Star Trek canon, right? Because, not to bury the lead too much,
it's the Gorn.
It's the Gorn!
Yeah. And I agree with all of that. And so on my second watch through, I was able to identify where my dislike was coming from. And then I talked to you about it, and I was like, that is what it was. You know, it was that pacing, it was that dialogue that didn't seem to fit. But now, sort of reflecting on it, I'm super happy about it, and I love it now.
What I really liked was the Gorn, and we'll get to them more in Alien of the Week. But looking at the Gorn, how they were portrayed in this, and how they are portrayed in the episode of the original series, Arena. Relentless. They speak about it a lot in this episode, even though you don't actually see the Gorn. But they're described as relentless, hunters, unstoppable, merciless. And then you think about Kirk running from that Gorn around the mountains, throwing rocks at it, right? Like yes,
double punch.
Oh. I got so excited when it looked like the Gorn were gonna board the ship.
Yeah.
I was like, is Pike gonna throw down with the Gorn? Are we gonna get a double punch? Never happens.
No.
The other... Okay. 2 other thoughts. I'll do the positive one first, and then we're gonna sidetrack on a rant here.
Okay.
We talked last week about Hemmer needing more space. And he got more space in this episode.
Yeah.
The dynamic between Hemmer and Uhura was excellent.
Yeah, excellent. It was super watchable.
Yeah, and I feel like it did more to take his character from being just the snarky engineer in the background who doesn't really contribute to ongoing conversations or dramas or whatever in the show to really being... And he's got a bit of a mentor figure thing now going on with Uhura. He's helping her down her path of Starfleet, not Starfleet. And he was still able to be funny while he did it.
Yeah.
So it was a nice balance there.
Yep.
I like that. Now,
time for the rant.
Where is Sam?
Where is Sam Kirk?
Where is Sam? So if you're just going to do it, if you just put Sam in, and we talked about this last week too, if he's just there to be the famous name.
Mm-hmm.
Then have him be a red shirt. You know, like he can still be a science officer, but throw him in an episode, every episode, and just have it be the running gag where he gets knocked out, he gets beat up, he gets zapped by the lightning bolt.
Yeah.
Like, do something with him.
Mm-hmm.
Because as it stands right now, as a viewer, I feel like you just inserted a character for the sake of inserting a character. He's a lieutenant, for God's sake.
Right. I feel like if that was the idea, just to have the sort of, you know, the interest that you can spark with the name Kirk,
Mm-hmm.
which is fine. If that's the idea behind it, this was your episode, right? Because Kirk and the Gorn, as far as the original series and kind of the callback to original sort of Star Trek tropes, this is where you want to insert Kirk.
Yes.
It's the Gorn.
Seems like a huge missed opportunity.
It does.
And I'm not happy about it.
I'm not me neither. But I think I'm less upset that he wasn't just in this specific episode and more that he was introduced and we've really seen nothing of Sam Kirk. I still don't know who he is 4 episodes in. And I would like to.
And he had, what, one appearance on the bridge.
Yep.
In the very first episode.
Right.
Walks onto the bridge. He gets invited to the captain's mess.
Yeah.
He's there for that.
Yeah.
Did he... Oh, okay. We're sure he didn't just die when he got zapped by the comet, right?
We're not sure, but, you know, I feel...
Because, like, I've gone way out of my way to avoid spoilers on Strange New Worlds.
Right.
Because I think it's kind of... I hope it comes across as kind of endearing that here we are months after the series has been finished. We're still watching and reviewing them as if they were just coming out. So
endearing, not slow.
So is it possible that he's just dead and we missed it?
I'm actually fine with that. Like, I don't think he is, but I'm fine with saying that because I love the idea of Sam being a red shirt more than I love him as just Kirk's brother.
Yeah.
He's dead, and then if we see him again, you know, he's not dead.
Yeah, you could do kind of like the modern red shirt, like they did with Worf.
Yeah.
Where every time there's a dangerous thing, Worf runs at it, gets thrown across the bridge, knocked out, whatever.
Yeah.
Just to have that be Sam. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was it for my rant on first impressions.
Okay.
Our next segment, it's so bad it's good, where we break down the campiest moments of camp.
There were quite a few in this episode.
Yeah. For me, most of it is in the dialogue.
Yeah. I mean, it was in the dialogue, and it was that's what was jarring to me at first, and then I recognized it for what it was, and I love every second of it now. So who had the lines?
So the campiest line that stuck out to me was, and it happened a few times in the episode, between Captain Pike and La'ana.
Lon, yeah.
La'an. I've been doing that all night. I've been adding an extra A at the end of her name. I don't know.
Not just her, it's other people too.
That's true. Yeah, I've been pretty bad tonight.
Yeah.
I'm pretty bad.
All right.
We're gonna try and make it through this episode. I shouldn't say, of course, but she is familiar with the Gorn. She's
Having been abducted.
And so she's kind of going around and telling all the crew about how relentless and merciless and evil the Gorn are, and it's definitely got a vibe of we're all gonna die. Mm-hmm. And Pike kind of pulls her aside and, you know, if you make your crew believe in miracles, they might just give you one. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful camp. Mm-hmm. I loved it. As much as it made my skin crawl, it was so bad it was good.
Yes, it was. Pike had several of those lines, actually, and he had... So when Spock sort of magics the ability of the Enterprise to detect the enemy ship,
yes,
he sort of brings it in his dry Spock way to Captain Pike. He's like, look what I've done. And Pike turns into sort of in awe, is like, you just turned a compass into radar.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, here we go. That's pure gold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was so strange watching all the modern visual effects. And then every time a character opens their mouth, it's just these really corny lines.
Ortega's was a big one. She brought quite a bit of the sort of campy snark to the table.
Oh yeah.
And I think in several moments, Pike is sort of having to do the side eye. Like, did you just say that?
I mean, in her defense, she's convinced they're all about to die. She's like, I don't really care.
Yeah,
Give me
she's
all the
not
stuff.
happy with any of the decisions going on. She's second guessing everyone on the bridge.
She's such a security officer. I mean, even though she's the pilot.
Right.
But they haven't really introduced someone as head of security in this show. And the original series really didn't have one either. Like, I feel like that's kind of a next-gen thing.
Yeah.
So she fits that role nicely where every time there's danger, it's arm the torpedoes, let's go fight it. Like Malcolm Reed.
Yeah, let me fly around the danger a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She did some great piloting.
Mm-hmm.
And I would be upset too if my captain had, told me to hold the ship just outside of destruction range of a black hole.
You've got that like sort of classic radar pinging going on of the enemy ship approaching.
Yeah, beep.
And you're like, they're gonna hit us, and she's like, I'm moving it, and then
I'm gonna move the ship. She's like, no, you're not. Preparing to engage the enemy. Stop it.
Put. Ortegas, calm down.
The other really, and this one it's still good camp. It's still good Star Trek dialogue. I'm not super thrilled that it continues to come up though. It was between Hemmer and Uhura.
Okay.
And it's towards the end of the episode when they're getting ready to open the cargo bay door.
Yeah.
And Uhura, they're talking about death and whether or not
she's found
Hemmer believes in death or how.
Yeah.
And he's saying, well, no, because my people believe that you die when you fulfilled your purpose.
Right.
And my purpose was to, I don't remember what he said.
To fix things.
To fix things, right. It was cheesy like that.
Yeah.
And Uhura has this, oh my God, it's the cheesiest line ever. She's like, well, I don't know what my purpose is. Does that mean I won't die? And Hemmer's like, I don't know, let's find out.
Yeah, I mean, we're just kind of wait and see on that.
Yeah, and he's like, I don't know. Boom, opens the cargo bay door. So it was funny. It was enjoyable. Something about the way they've approached Uhura not knowing her place seems.
Look, I think
it's not the smoothest fit into this puzzle. I get the cadet aspect of it. I get that it's a young Uhura, but it seems to be coming up in weird places.
Okay, so but in my stance on this is that ever since Star Trek Discovery, you have had no patience for anything like this.
Okay.
And whenever it comes up, this is like a trauma response for you a little bit.
And yes, and I am on the search for it. Well, not the search for it. I'm on the lookout for it.
Right.
Because
you're hyper vigilant to anything like this.
I will adamantly discuss how Star Trek Discovery has ruined Michael Burnham's character.
Okay,
Not this episode, later episodes.
We'll get to.
We will have that conversation.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm yes. I am traumatized, and every time this comes up with Uhura, I am going to be
We're gonna be looking at it.
Yeah.
That's fair.
But in this segment, it was so bad it was good.
Yeah.
It was just a campy, sort of innocent, I'm the cadet, I don't want to die, I'm afraid of death. What do you believe? Mm-hmm. Oh, well, I don't have a purpose, so I guess I get to live.
Right.
Something else that doesn't really fit into a segment, but we did talk about it as something on our wish list a million episodes ago, was Hemmer and what's the name of his branch of the
Enar?
The Enar.
Right.
We had been discussing how the Enar got into the Federation.
Okay.
And I really like that they addressed it in this episode. She's like, well, your people are pacifists. Mm-hmm. So, how do you reconcile that with being in the Federation? It's like, well, pacifism is an active thing. So, I won't help Starfleet wage war.
Right.
But if I can help bring peace and stability to the galaxy by being on the ship and keeping it running and keeping this mission going, I'm fulfilling my role of pacifism.
Right. So active pacifism is not a contradiction in terms as far as Hemmer is concerned. Hemmer has sort of made that jump, and it works for him. And I buy it too. I'll buy that.
I bought it as a way to. It makes sense for if you want to have the Enar in Star Trek,
or at least an Enar. I mean,
right. Yeah, and I think he's more of a Worf character. This episode's going to be how many times I can reference Worf. Maybe because it's the only character whose name I'm not completely messing up.
You're not saying Worfa.
Worfa.
You should, though. I think that's fun.
So Worfa, is the only Klingon in the Federation.
Right.
In Starfleet.
Yes.
And I think Hemmer's going to be a similar thing.
Right. So Saru, Worfa,
yeah,
and Hemmer.
Yeah. Every Star Trek's got to have one, right?
It seems
at least.
Yeah, it seems like it.
At least one.
Right.
Next Generation got two, because you had Worf and Data.
Right. And then Voyager has 7 of 9.
Yeah, and the Maquis.
And Neelix. Guess. Okay,
it is not unique to have annoying
no
characters running around your ship.
No, that's not unique, but Neelix
Just
is
talk to
unique in
Picard.
so many other ways.
Let's do the ship next.
I'm happy to do the ship then.
Let's do the ship.
Okay.
Also really campy the way they approach the ship.
Okay. I mean, I even could say my notes on the ship aren't even necessarily camp. It's just I'm confused by the ship in this episode.
Okay.
I have confusion.
Okay.
All right, and my confusion centers around some of the things that happen. So when they broach the subject of how are we going to fight back against the Gorn right now, and it's mentioned that there's only one torpedo left because the others have been destroyed.
Okay, so this is why I was like, do we do ship or do we do junk science?
Yeah, this is fine. Like, it works for both. I'm doing it now with the ship because I'm wondering
how all the torpedoes were destroyed without destroying the ship.
Yeah, I'm curious about this.
I was really curious about that too.
Yeah, and I'm like, how in this explosion of the torpedo bay did one torpedo just be like, no, I'm okay. I don't know how that happens.
Just Strange New Worlds has so far established a bit of a pattern where they're fine just not explaining things.
And mostly I'm fine with them doing that because it gives me the opportunity to point out the fact that they're not explaining things.
Absolutely.
Which is hilarious.
Absolutely. Last week's episode, the transporter worked for 10 minutes and then it didn't work for the next 10 minutes and then it worked again for 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. No need to explain it.
No.
This episode, torpedoes just be blowing up and the ship is fine.
Yeah.
But we have one.
We have one, and it was just happened to be somewhere else at the time.
Yeah.
It was in engineering they were working on.
So when I say the ship had a lot of camp in it, it's that scene where they're pushing the Enterprise, and by that scene I mean it shows up in almost every Trek, where they're pushing the ship, whether it's the Enterprise or Voyager or whatever, to like the breaking point.
Right.
And everyone around the captain is like, the ship can't do it. We can't take anymore. I got no more, Captain. That's my worst Scottish accent.
That's fine. We knew where we were going with it.
And Pike is just sitting there. He's like, nah, she can take it.
Mm-hmm.
She'll hold together.
Right.
She's got this.
And he's always right.
Of course the captain's always right. The captain is like, the ship and the captain are connected in a spiritual, sync. Mm-hmm. There's symbiotic relationship. You can't have a captain without a ship. You can't have a ship without a captain.
Right.
But it's campy.
It is pretty campy, but it's an interesting relationship that we haven't discussed explicitly before this, and between any other ship and captain. Mm-hmm. So Pike and the Enterprise is a great place to sort of start that, because now I think I haven't really thought of it in those terms before, but there is that connection, and I'm gonna have fun exploring that in later iterations of Trek that we discuss.
Yeah, how captains view their ship, how they treat their ship, varies from captain to captain. Where do you think Picard landed on that with his relationship to the Enterprise? Because Sisko loves the Defiant.
Yes.
Like, loves the Defiant.
Just explicitly.
He loves getting it blown up.
Yeah. Yep. She'll hold.
Janeway obviously loves Voyager because, well, you don't have a choice.
Right.
It's the ship you got. Mm-hmm. The Federation ain't sending you a new one.
Yeah, but there's lots of sentimental moments about the sort of Janeway and Sisko like waxing poetic about their ships and having moments of like great faith in this vessel. It's carried us so far through so much. Yeah.
And while both of those ships were cutting edge, they're not junky ships. Enterprise, particularly when Picard is captain, you have this Next Generation is what I like to call sort of peak Starfleet. It's as powerful as you ever see it, almost unchallenged. And the Enterprise is the flagship of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean...
Whereas if you're the captain of the Defiant, you're like, yeah, I got my... Sometimes it works.
I mean, it's different. The Defiant is very much sort of a battleship, right?
Yeah.
Most other Starfleet vessels built for exploration, prepared for a fight, but explicitly not designed for it. But I feel like, and I can't recall specific instances, but I do feel like there are plenty of moments where Picard is like sort of, gazing, sort of get that faraway look and just sort of, oh, Enterprise. It's my ship.
You know one that jumps to my mind? First Contact.
That movie.
Yes. Yes.
It happened.
Yeah, where Picard just flips out about there being Borg on his ship because it is his ship, and it is not giving it up.
And taking that sort of captainship relationship, and that's what happens to Picard later. Before that, he's like having trauma response. My ship has been taken over, like I was once taken over.
So I think that's where we land on how Picard feels about his ship.
Yeah, I think so.
But let's talk about the Gorn ships.
Okay.
Let's talk about the ones doing the blowing up.
Yeah. So I'm going to say straight off the bat that this one kind of dinky, tiny-ass Gorn ship, probably like a single pilot on board, is doing real well at beating the hell out of the Enterprise. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's putting up an impressive display.
It managed to destroy all of their torpedoes.
It did, and at least most of their medical supplies.
Yeah.
Wait. I'm sorry, but like...
Are the medical supplies and the torpedoes in the same... Is that what the auxiliary bay of sickbay is?
That's
the torpedo bay? What I liked about the Gorn ships, the design on them was really cool. They were kind of a weird... They reminded me of the alien crafts you would see in like old arcade video games.
Yes, I agree.
The specific game I'm drawing a blank on, but that's just the day I'm having. Yeah. So
yeah, the aesthetics of the ship. So whenever La'an, who's the only one with any sort of Gorn experience, is trying to describe the Gorn, she's trying to impart to everyone else the fact that these are aliens with which there can be no communication or common ground.
Right.
And I feel like the ship design for the Gorn, they're trying to reinforce that, right? So there's nothing symmetrical about the ships, especially the big one, which is kind of like these weird sort of twisted flutes of...
it almost reminded me of a Breen ship.
Yeah, but at least the Breen ship are mostly symmetrical. There's really not much symmetry involved.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
That is true.
There's not too much symmetry involved at all with the Gorn ship, which that's what stuck out to me anyway. Mm-hmm. Trying to reinforce the alienness of these aliens. Like even the aesthetics that they have or the functionality is, we can't see it by looking at their ships.
That's a great point you make. There was something jarring, sort of weird looking at those ships, but yeah, they're going for so alien you just don't even recognize it thing.
Yeah.
I didn't pick up on that when I was watching it. What I picked up on was that the Gorn ships, much like transporters, work when you need them to and blow up when you need them to.
That's true.
Well done for solving a problem without torpedoes.
They
used their junk science to defeat the Gorn.
Yes. Explain to me gravitational redshift. Boom. Got it.
Yeah. As always, I have a lot of junk science.
Yeah.
Because it's Star Trek, and that's what Star Trek does, is junk science. Mm-hmm. The first one I want to touch on, though, before we get into like all of the redshift and wormholes and black holes and things that I don't really understand, but I'm pretty sure were junk science. There's a scene where La'an and Spock take a shuttle, and I don't know what they're actually going to try and do. That was sort of left ambiguous. Maybe they were trying to send out a probe to ask for help.
So the way it was a fairly vague plan, but I think they assumed that they could approach closer than the Enterprise could and still remain undetected.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And even if they were detected, it just was the loss of your 2 bridge officers rather than the entire Enterprise.
Yeah, it's just your chief science officer and your first officer.
Yeah, acting first. Yeah,
it's fine.
It's fine. And so they just they wanted we can't formulate a strategy from here, so maybe we take the risk of sending a shuttle, and maybe we have a game plan after that.
Turns out it was a great gamble.
Yeah,
because they have plenty of time for a mind meld on the way.
I think this is our first mind meld.
This is our first mind meld
for the series. Yeah.
And while they are doing this mind meld, you get the full story of La'an and her encounter with the Gorn.
Right.
And she remembers that what the Gorn ships are using to communicate with each other are basically like light signals, like you would old ships would have done, which was cool.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Right up until the point where the shuttle flies up next to the mothership and signals it, our ship has been taken over by humans. So they blow up the other Gorn. The mothership blows up the other Gorn ship, and how did the mothership not be like, wait, what's this small, strange vessel that's signaling us?
La'an's instant and pretty perfect recall after the mind meld of the Gorn written language, that she's able to mock that message up in 2 seconds flat. It's perfectly.
First off, her brother comes up with that code. We're not really sure how long they've been in captivity.
Right.
But man, he had that code cracked.
Yeah,
he had the entire alphabet. He had the thesaurus.
Yeah, and the syntax, all of it.
Yeah, and yes, 1 mind meld and 1 memory glimpse. Well, she has an augment, so maybe she's got an eidetic memory or something.
Sure.
No, I don't know. And then it's the black hole comes in at the end when they're escaping. They sort of slingshot themselves around it.
Yeah, so the black hole is both the method of their escape and also their impetus to escape quickly, because they can't hide forever, due both to the pressure and the fact that in the midst of their hiding in this brown dwarf, they're like, wow, we actually picked this exact moment is within the next hour, this whole thing is going to go into the black hole.
It's always convenient how that works out.
Yeah.
It's been there for thousands of years.
Absolutely,
whatever.
yeah, but this is
it's
this moment right now when we're hiding in it is when it's all fucking going in the dark.
Our timing is immaculate. Shot by cannon, alien of the week.
Right.
Because it's the Gorn.
It is the Gorn.
I mentioned at the beginning of the episode how the Gorn are described, even though we don't see them,
right,
but they're described as this relentless, cold hunter.
Yes.
And to the Federation, to the Starfleet of Strange New Worlds, seems to be a really unimaginable thing. Which is weird considering they just went through a war with the Klingons. But looking at Arena, the Star Trek original series episode where the Gorn come from, you forget how militarized the original Star Trek was. I like that episode a lot because it's really a judgment on humanity, because there's another alien race that shows up at the end of that episode. I can't remember their name, but who actually bring Kirk and the Gorn to that planet. Mm-hmm. Something with an M. And
or C. I forget too.
Yeah. But they think that Kirk and the Gorn are basically the same entity, because Kirk goes into their space with nothing but hatred and blood in his heart, wanting Gorn blood. And then you find out that it's actually possibly the Federation who like invaded Gorn space to begin with, and the Gorn were like, well, we blew up your colony, put it up on our planet.
You know? Yeah, you had phasers and everything.
We saw your mortar.
Yeah.
We saw what that thing did.
Yeah.
So don't tell me you're on a mission of peace.
Right. So they're painting this picture that the Federation is in fact in the wrong in this scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And there is no doubt in Strange New Worlds so far as to the Gorn possibly having less than I'm just here to eat you motivations. In Strange New World, they're just there to eat you. So if the Gorn do show up again and are going to have repeat episodes, there is going to be a time, hopefully, where Pike and the Gorn are in the same room and they are going to fight. And that is where I want my one double punch this season.
Yeah. If they miss it, I'm going to have something to say about it.
I want the exact same choreography that Kirk used the first time he fought the Gorn. I want Pike to judo chop it, and then I want him to double hand punch it, and then I want him to kick it, and then he can get knocked out, and Lon or Number One can show up, and we can have a well-scripted fight scene.
Absolutely.
But that's what I want.
Yeah. I actually hold out a good hope for this. If in that follow-up Gorn episode, if it happens, they have the same writers who wrote this episode, I feel like they're on board with it.
In watching these two back to back, the messaging is the way each episode ends is very interesting, because in Arena, the crew goes off on this mission of vengeance, and the messaging at the end of it comes back around to, don't jump to conclusions.
Yeah.
About things, and approach every situation looking for better understanding.
Right.
And so you start off hyper-militarized, and you end sort of demilitarized. Very Star Trek.
Yes. Okay.
Utopia.
Yeah.
In Strange New Worlds, you start off on a mission of mercy and exploration.
Uh-huh.
And at the end of it, there's that conversation that Lon and Pike have where he's like, see? Miracle delivered.
Right.
She's like, well, what about next time? And Pike's like, we'll be ready for him next time. So there's a message of like hope throughout the series, throughout the episode, and then it ends with this ramping up of the arms war, so to speak.
Okay, yeah.
And it's just interesting how they're the same messaging, but just flipped.
Yeah. That is interesting.
Yeah.
Like conflict is coming, like we got to be ready for it, and thus far, the only way that we can really be prepared is, we got to upgrade to the torpedo bay for one.
Yeah, we need better torpedo bays and a lot more brown dwarfs. That's going to do it for this week's episode of the Astromech Show. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, and if you enjoyed what this channel is doing in general, please, number one thing you can do, give us a like, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications. You can also check out our new Facebook page. It is the Astromech Show on Facebook. Pretty easy to find.
Yep.
We are a very unique name.
We'll get the conversation going over there.
Yes. I've been Max.
I've been Will.
And we will trek you next week.